Welcome to Metrics That Matter. We will learn how to make sense of your fundraising data to make better decisions and raise more money with less effort. Brought to you by fundraisingreportcard.com, a simple and free analytics and reporting tool for nonprofit pros. Now measuring is easier than ever with fundraisingreportcard.com.
Welcome to season 2. I hit record this time.
I was going on a roll a moment ago, but yes, season 2, Tim. I'm happy to be here. How about yourself?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
First off, I just want to dive into what season 2 is all about.
Yeah, so I think season 2 is going to be a little bit different from season 1. Season 1, we really focused on the Metrics That Matter ebook and, talking about some of those core concepts.
Yeah, good foundation for the listeners.
Exactly. And this season, we want it to be more about you, the fundraising professional, the person that's boots on the ground. Whether that be implementing key performance dashboards at your organization, evidence-based fundraising, just simple questions about retention rates and things like that. We want to make this season a little bit more conversational, a little bit more of a discussion, and get your questions in on the show and address them and make sure that we're providing really good insights for your day-to-day job.
Yeah, think of us as your personal educational assistants as you go through your day-to-day work. And if you run across stuff that you need answered, send that in, and we're going to be really happy to address that. Send it in 2 ways. Tim at imarketsmart.com is one way by just writing in, and you can also call in to the voicemail at 575-815-4573. So that's 2 ways. You can just pick up your phone and call or send an email. So.
Yeah, and if you call in, leave a voicemail, leave a question. So, what's interesting here is neither Tim or I are professional fundraisers, so you might be thinking, well, why would I want your advice or your input on how to, address a situation in my organization? Well, the fun part about being like a vendor, if you want to call it that, a partner to organizations, is that we've been able to be inside of hundreds and really thousands of different organizations over the past few years. And yes, circumstances are different and things along those lines change from organization to organization, but some of the same themes and motifs and challenges exist. And we're able to see solutions get implemented, some that work, some that don't. And from that experience, we'd love to hear your questions and be able to, provide whatever value and advice we can from our perspective. So please, if you can, call in, email in, and we'll do our best.
Yeah. With that, Greg from Eugene, Oregon wrote in to Tim at imarketsmart.com, just like you can. Greg asks, you might think about the fundamental question, how do I get my management to want data-driven information? Too often people don't want the measurement because they can be then held accountable. It's much safer for them to BS their way through explanations of results. All sorts of excuses are presented, such as we're different, it's too hard to calculate, or it can't be measured, etc. This is a very important topic and a very hard one. Keep up your good work, Greg. So what do you have to say to that?
So it all starts with culture, right? And we're not going to get too deep into philosophy and anthropology and things like that on this show, but it really does all start with a culture. So Steve McLaughlin, I know I've mentioned him on the show before. I think he's VP of Analytics or Director of Analytics at Blackbaud.
Yeah.
He wrote this book, and if you're listening to season 2 and you didn't listen to season 1 when I recommended this book, get it. It's called Data-Driven Nonprofits. And Steve shares many stories. That's really what he does well. Is he's this fantastic storyteller of how organizations have built a data-driven culture. So I'll give the perspective from our organization, because this concept of building a culture that is evidence-based and supports the idea that you can measure metrics to justify and validate outcomes, that happens at nonprofits, for-profits, government organizations, anywhere and everything in between. So, if we share the story of our organization here at MarketSmart, when we were smaller and a little less refined, most decisions were made on hunches. We had an idea, someone in a leadership position suggested, hey, go try and do that. And we did it. And 6 months later, you see if it worked. Tim's got a big smile on his face because we've experienced that, right? And part of that can be for reasons that Greg described, like, leadership says it's different here or it's too challenging to measure the metrics. But you quickly realize if you have the vision and the goal to kind of outgrow maybe a smaller shop like MarketSmart once was, our company here, you really come to the conclusion that you need to be evidence-based. You need to have metrics in place that tell you if you're making the right decisions. So it's almost like this culture shift that occurs at the top. It's this realization that we won't be able to further our mission and therefore have as much success if we don't accept the fact that we need to move away from hunches and we need to understand what our information, what our data is trying to tell us. So Steve McLaughlin's book, Data-Driven Nonprofits, tells myriad stories about how this work looks in practice within nonprofit organizations. And then anecdotally from our experience here at MarketSmart, it's a culture shift. It's the leadership team buying in to the idea that we can measure and know how effective we are. And sometimes that's ugly, sometimes it's beautiful, but it builds out accountability, transparency, and things like that, which ultimately, further the cause.
Yeah, and some direct questions within here, such as it's too hard to calculate. Perhaps you have this data already, and maybe you can show them Fundraising Report Card as an option to calculate that stuff.
Well, and even, Tim, if you extrapolate out of that, the idea is that concept of it's too hard to calculate. Well, that's why vendors exist, right? That's why businesses are for-profit businesses, is because, there's an opportunity in the market where people recognize that they should be doing something, but they're not able to because they don't have the resources, the time, the skills necessary. That's why we built Fundraising Report Card. That's why Tableau exists for-profit companies or nonprofits too, if you have dedicated staff, to answer that question of, well, we don't have the resources maybe to calculate these numbers. Well, that was a problem that was addressed by the for-profit community. Mm-hmm. They said, great. Enough organizations don't have access to this information. We know that they'll operate more efficiently if they have access to it. Let's build something that supports them. That's why we built Fundraising Report Card.
Yeah. Now, is there anything that can't be measured? Is that a lame excuse?
I mean, that's a great excuse when you're transitioning from hunches to something that can be measured. I mean, I'll talk about my own personal experience here at MarketSmart. You know how many bad metrics I measured for months? A lot. And you know how I got around that? I got a mentor. And you know what the mentor did? He coached me up on finding the right metrics. Mm-hmm. And that's an investment that the organization's making. The organization, MarketSmart here, and think about your nonprofit. If you can recognize that being evidence-based and having these metrics will benefit your organization over the long term, then you need to start getting some information written down, your idea of what metrics are important. That's why you're listening to our podcast, right? Is to get some insight and ideas about what metrics might be important. Everything that we tell you here on the show or last season or next season, it's not going to be perfect for your organization. Getting a mentor, getting a consultant, getting someone who can really understand the nuts and bolts of your organization, your plan for growth, your plan for scalability, things along those lines. Get a mentor. Get them to come in, have conversations with them. They'll ask the right questions. This is why we want you to call in your questions to our voicemail so that we can address your specific questions on the show. Tim and I are able to help with this. So I guess at the root of Greg's question, which was, can you say, well, we don't know what to measure or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Yes, you can use that as an excuse, but you'll quickly realize that you can mitigate that by bringing in some outside counsel that can help you find focus.
Yeah. And you're not so different. Nonprofits, they have different aspects of them, but in the end, you're not different enough where this stuff doesn't matter.
I love, with our leadership team here at MarketSmart, to remind everyone, we're not the first people to do this.
No,
far from it. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of other people and organizations have gone down this path before. Same with your nonprofit. Steve McLaughlin's book, Data-Driven Nonprofits, the stories he shares with you, those are meant to kind of inspire you and realize, okay, I'm not the only one. Other organizations have gone through this painstaking process of becoming evidence-based, of becoming data-driven, of building that culture. And they're going to be tidbits and pieces that you can draw inspiration from. And that's the idea, is yes, you're unique. Yes, you're special. I wish my mom was still around, keep telling me those things. But, there's some underlying common characteristics, and you can look at how other organizations, how other folks have handled these situations, and use that to inform your process.
Yeah. Well, anything else on Greg's question here?
Comes back to culture. So, Greg, if you're listening, which I hope you are, or anyone else who's kind of dealt with this, and this is a real issue. This is not like a fuzzy maybe issue.
It's a systematic issue throughout a lot of nonprofits
and for-profits too. It's a culture shift type of issue.
In many cases, an ego issue with people up at the top.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. It can definitely be a leadership issue. So if you are experiencing those things, it's really, do you have an organization that buys into your mission and your vision? And if the answer to that's no, then it might be time to find a different organization. But if the answer to that's yes, then it's using these different resources, Steve's book, our podcast, different things to help build a case for support to shift that culture to become evidence-based. So that's the overarching theme here. You're not alone. Other organizations are going through the same thing. And Greg, great question. This is at the crux of why being data-driven is so important.
Yeah. Well, with your question, if you want to write in, tim@imarketsmart.com is where you do that.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your fundraising efforts with easy-to-use analytics and charts. Get your proposals approved faster by using these beautiful and elegant charts created automatically with fundraisingreportcard.com. You'll also find a great blog that dives deep into what data means for your organization and how you can use it effectively to make smarter decisions. Start learning and start generating beautiful charts by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now back to Metrics That Matter.
Erica from Tasmania called in just like you can to 575-815-4573. Here's Erica's question.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I am in Hobart, Tasmania. My question was around lapsed donors. So first of all, how do you decide what is a lapsed donor? Is it only somebody that donated last year but didn't donate this year? What are some other categories of lapsed donors? And then any strategies around re-engaging with lapsed donors, or what it means when you have a high amount of lapsed donors. Thank you. Bye.
So, what do you say to that? Thank you, Erica, for calling in. 575-815-4573.
Yeah, Erica, thanks for calling in. And man, that is cool. I really hope more people call in, Tim.
All right, that's a lot of fun.
That.
Yeah,
so that's
awesome.
awesome.
Call in like Erica did. That's great.
So Erica's question, let's break it down. So she first asked, what's the definition of a lapsed donor? Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about that. And then the second piece of that was resources or suggestions about reactivation activities. So the idea of bringing those lapsed donors back into the fold. So first, on the definition of a lapsed donor, when I first started working in the world of data-driven fundraising, I was hard set that a lapsed donor was a donor who gave last year, so within a 12-month period, and then did not give in the next year, the next 12-month period. Okay, so it's a year-over-year lapsing or attrition of a donor. I learned probably on my third or fourth phone call with beta testers for Fundraising Report Card that is not the only definition of lapsed donor. Okay, so organizations, I think, and I wish I had the specific resource that this came from, but I think a lot of membership-based organizations like to look at, especially YMCAs and things like that. If you're from a YMCA, director of development at a YMCA, and I'm getting this wrong, please, comment or call in next time. But I think they like to look at 18-month windows. So organizations like to look at 18-month windows because it gets a more true sense of, is someone actually giving to the organization, but maybe not at the same time year over year, something along those lines.
If it's just 12 months, they may delay to the 13th month and you think you lost that donor.
Exactly, and we run into the same thing. If it's not clear by now, we measure the same metrics that we preach for, everyone with Fundraising Report Card here at MarketSmart. I mean, we look at even both 12-month and 18-month lapsed customers for us because it does give you a sense of, okay, is this person really gone after, month number 12? Sure, maybe, but what's the difference between that rate and the rate at which they're gone after 18 months? So 18 months will give you a more true kind of, okay, they're definitely not engaging with us anymore. With that being said, Fundraising Report Card, the tool that we've built out, it's going to give you that year-over-year lapsed, and it's still good, still useful. It's also really helpful for identifying particular segments of donors. You'd rather look at a 12-month window and say, hey, Jane Doe hasn't given yet again, and then be pleasantly surprised in month 17 when she does. You'd rather be, aware, kind of having a hot list of potential people to engage with. Mm-hmm. So your definition, Erica, is going to be 12 or 18 month. I haven't heard of anything different.
Okay.
Then to kind of think about some strategies. So this is before reactivation.
For re-engaging lapsed donors, I would imagine the approach and strategy would be different for the low dollar donors versus the high dollar donors, and how would that vary? The low dollar donors, how do you try to encourage them to give again where it's personable enough but not annoying is a hard balance? I don't know if you have advice for that.
Well, it ties in with reactivating small dollar donors, and it also, the idea that I'm about to share, helps with just general year-over-year retention rate. It's been proven through a variety of different research and reports, and well, I guess we'll have to dig some up for the show notes. Monthly giving programs boost year-over-year retention rate, which obviously is going to decrease the number of donors who have lapsed, either 12 or 18-month lapse. Yeah. So implementing and then executing on a monthly giving program. So instead of a donor supporting you with a $100 contribution, every 12 months or every 16 months, signing them up for a $10 a month recurring plan, they're much more likely to be retained over the long haul.
Yeah, they'll almost not forget they're giving it, but they're like, oh, $10 went out that much. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. This is your classic,
subscription model. You might have Netflix, but you might not watch it every day. Yeah.
And I'm thinking we're outside of DC, and I forget what our DC public radio station is, but it's that, right? Like it's what you're used to. It's that small monthly subscription, or in this case, it's not a subscription; it's a contribution to the organization. That's a great technique to decrease lapsed donors, increase retention rate. Hard to execute on. You really have to understand your constituency, things like that. So one tactic to reactivate would be implementing a monthly giving program and then having targeted marketing to those that have lapsed or left the organization to get them back on to monthly giving. Now, other resources or strategies that I've seen implemented are specific letters, so reactivation-esque letters where you're asking for a similar or lesser donation amount. So the ask string within that reactivation letter is similar or less than the previous donation that you have on file for that person, their last contribution, something along those lines. And then there's also the technique of not necessarily just doing another solicitation letter that's, reactivation focused. Also something that we implement here with organizations is a supporter survey. So engaging with these supporters in a way that doesn't necessarily solicit them, but helps them remember why they're engaged with the organization. So sending them a survey where you're asking them questions about what programs they are most aligned with and which aspects of the mission they like the most and how recently they've engaged with the organization, things like that will get them in a giving mindset. And even without a solicitation on a survey, you're going to see an uptick in those that are reactivating their relationship with the organization just because they're remembering why they were part of it in the first place.
I don't know about you, but if I get something that helps me remember why I care, I'm not going to need it spoon-fed on that thing to go to this URL to donate. I'm going to Google them and find their organization, and if they have a well-designed website, I'll be able to donate pretty easily.
Sometimes it's frustrating for marketing folks, and, fundraising is partly marketing. It's frustrating to not be able to know that, did this person click on this tracked URL or go to this specific landing page? Like, how do I attribute that they came through this or that or X or Y or Z? There's a dose of common sense that has to come, even in this data-driven world. If you send out a survey, to your supporters, like let's say a list of 1,000 lapsed donors year over year, and then you see an uptick in donations over the next 3 days, like you can make that connection. You could
also look at the 1,000 you sent it to. And as long as it's not anonymous donations, which I don't think most are, you'd be able to attribute that pretty easily, I would say.
And that is why Tim Chatton, ladies and gentlemen, is our marketing manager here at MarketSmart. Those ideas, yes, exactly. Though you're right. So you can draw this connection between your activities that aren't a direct solicitation and the outcome, which is obviously reactivated funders. So you've got a couple different techniques. One is go do a quick Google search for your favorite consultant space reactivation strategy, and they'll have like 6 blog posts about how to reactivate donors. And that's generally around ask strings that are similar or a little bit less, and language that pertains to the last time they gave, segmenting lists, all that fun stuff. Or you can take a slightly nuanced and different approach, which is actually not to solicit, but to help that supporter remember why they engaged with your organization in the first place and why they're still interested in your organization. The best initiative that I have to offer is do a supporter survey. Don't even send them something that says we saved 86 seals or something like that. Send them a survey and ask them, which aspect of our mission do you appreciate the most? Is it the fact that we save seals, or is it the fact that we save other sea creatures? I don't know what organization.
Gotta save the octopuses.
I'm going to Google search that, savetheoctopuses.org. But that's the idea, is help them like self-actualize themselves with the organization. They'll do exactly what Tim said. They'll go do a Google search. They'll read some stories about your organization and the work you're doing. This is not sending them an annual report. This is asking them, why do you like us? They'll then go Google search and read your annual report and then make that donation.
Yeah.
So that's a great technique and a great tactic, and also one that doesn't feel bad. Like, you should not feel bad for asking your supporters why they
put
support.
yourself in their shoes, and if you got that piece of mail or email, what thoughts would go through your head?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I hope that helps, Erica, and that's kind of our approach when it comes to engaging with lapsed donors.
Okay. So you can call in to 575-815-4573, just like Erica did, and hear your voice on this podcast and have your question answered. Or you can write in and hear me read your beautiful email. You can write in to tim@imarketsmart.com to do that.
I love Tim's voice and all, but I would really appreciate if you call in. So
yeah, like us, yeah. So 575-815-4573. Anything else before we wrap up the show?
I'm thinking for season 1 or season 2, episode
Season 2,
1.
yeah.
I think this is a good start, Tim. I'm really excited to get more people involved in the discussion. And Greg, thank you for your question. Erica, thank you for yours. And let's keep this thing rolling.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Metrics That Matter. If you like this show, make sure to review it on Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. Download the Metrics That Matter ebook at www.fundraisingreportcard.com/book. If you'd like to have your question answered on this podcast, you can write in to tim@imarketsmart.com or call in to 575-815-4573. That's 575-815-4573. Looking forward to your questions. Thanks again for listening.